Hello, romance lovers. Today's story is called A Delightful Simple Life. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss out on more exciting stories. The mistress of the debauched Earl John is devoted to him body and soul. An uncouth woman who flirted with her younger brother. These very absurd rumors were about Catherine of Orleans, which her envious people spread about her. 10 years have passed since the moment when stepmother Laura married the noble Vicomte. There was a marked difference in attitude between the sisters, with open preference for one and absolute indifference to the other. Laura, together with her half-sister Anna, humiliated Katerina. The stepmother often allowed herself to yell at the girl even for raising her eyes. And even the Viscount of Orleans, who initially tried to accommodate them, eventually began to see Catherine as nothing more than a burden. Katerina didn't really need much. She didn't aspire to have the same number of outfits and shoes as Anna. She wasn't even bothered by those awful old threadbare curtains in her small bedroom. And even boots whose soles were so worn out that even the heels were of different heights. 2 years had passed since she had come to terms with this reality in memory of her late mother, but even her patience had come to an end. From now on, she no longer felt the need to live like this. Katerina was too tired of such a life. Katerina's stepmother, Laura Orlan. She looked like a haughty, evil woman, she called Katerina. Pointing her finger directly at the girl's face, she said that their family did not need a daughter like her. At that time, the girl silently looked at her. The girl's thoughts were that she was to blame for everything, as always. The girl was really tired of this attitude towards her. Therefore, closing her eyes, the girl walked proudly past her stepmother, who was poking her with her finger and scolding her again for the fact that the girl existed. The girl sat on a chair with her arms folded, looking at her stepmother, who was about to explode with anger. Turning to her, she began to reproach her for being the eldest daughter and how she dared to sit in front of a guest who was standing and asked her if that was. This made Katerina a little upset because she didn't teach her. The girl even thought that in front of the girl stood her fiancé, Charles Killholder. The girl did not understand what she was calling this pitiful man an important guest. Until the girl asked her stepmother what exactly she wanted from her. The girl sincerely did not understand what was expected of her. The stepmother replied that she had not told her that such a child would be of no use. The girl contemptuously asked her stepmother why she thought she wanted the girl to leave the estate. Katerina's stepsister bursts in the door and addresses the girl so excitedly. Anne of Orleans is Catherine's half-sister and Charles's mistress. She asked her sister not to say that. The girl shed a tear and said that these rumors could not be true and added that she believed in her sister. While Catherine's fiancé Charles comforts the emotional Anne, it was noticeable that he was quite concerned about the maiden. Charles turned to her and said that her tears were too precious for her to waste on such a thing, and the girl replied that she could not hold back her tears when she thought about the difficulties her sister would have to go through. As soon as Charles put his brave shoulder for her, her tears were gone. When she was in his arms, she looked at her sister. Katerina looked at them and thought that they had no shame or conscience. And the girl knew that. Moreover, Anna did not even hide the fact that she was having an affair with Charles behind her sister's back. The mother heard her daughter's words and was proud of her child and her kind heart. At this time, Katerina replied that she would leave. This definitely attracted more attention than Anna's near tears. The stepmother was surprised by the girl's answer. Katerina herself did not understand what exactly Matyuka found so unexpected and decided to ask her what exactly it meant. The stepmother was excited and decided to ask the girl if she really thought her scandalous stories would be forgotten if she left. And she wondered in her mind why the girl would hide her. The girl folded her arms and began to wonder what exactly she needed to do to fix this. And she decided to ask if maybe she should kill herself right here. She turned to Charles, asking his opinion on the matter, and added, asking whether the Orleans would be able to avoid the consequence. Of course, Anna and Charles were confused by such a question, but the guy could not find anything to answer the girl. It was clear from Anna's face that she was already bored and wanted to get it over with as soon as possible. Therefore, she rushed to Katerina, grabbed her hand, and asked her not to say that she was going. She began to blame herself for this and asked the girl to put this burden on her. Katerina is tired of her noisy stepmother, brainless fiancé, and duplicitous stepsister. Katerina felt disgusted with them until the very end and asked her sister to let her go. Anna looked at her and didn't understand what was wrong. Katerina added that the silence she heard could only mean that no one had anything against her, and added that she would go upstairs to pack her things. The girl went to her room and Anna shouted after her, which made the girl think that the fact that her sister didn't completely get out of character. Holding her small suitcase in her hands, the girl thought that even though she had packed all her things, there was still only one small suitcase left. As she walks to the exit, Katerina hears her stepmother addressing her and asking her what she is doing. The stepmother again begins to scold Katerina, telling her that her shamelessness knows no bounds, and she also asks how the girl dares to appropriate the family's property. The girl also replied that she understood everything and asked her to finally shut her mouth. For the first time in her life, she said everything she thought about her stepmother to her face. If she had known how nice it would be, she would have. As she was walking away, the girl heard her sister screaming that she couldn't believe that Catherine was leaving and asking Charles to do something. Catherine approaches Charles and slaps him for cheating on her sister. Until the stepsister can understand what is happening, she looks at the proud Catherine and Charles, who is lying on the floor. Katerina decides to hit Anna in the leg as well. She didn't understand what was happening and why she was doing it. After Katerina let out her emotions, she thought that she felt much better now. The girl turned to the couple and said that she had forgotten to say something. She only turned her head and added that they should tell their stepmother not to look for her if they wanted to live in peace and quiet, and she thought that she would live that way too. And she suggested that the couple in love say goodbye forever, as if they had never known each other. So the girl left the estate she hated and her new life began. That is how she finally chose her long and not always easy path. Finally, the girl felt what life was like. She felt the sun, and the girl wondered if there had ever been a day in recent years as cheerful as today. Finally, the girl's dream came true, and she would begin to live the way she wanted. She believed that there was nothing more perfect than the freedom she had never had. Leaving Orleans was the girl's main goal, but now she should decide where it would be better to go. The girl looked at the map and realized that the land owned by the Viscount only occupies a tiny piece of the entire earth. The girl could not believe that all this time she had lived on such a small piece of land. It was even difficult for her to breathe fully. The girl feels guilty and decides to apologize to her late mother, adding that she has endured for many years. But it is the kind gentleman who agreed to take Katerina asked her if she had decided where she wanted to go, and the girl told him that at that very moment she understood where the girl decided to go to the Duchy of Christopher, the most prosperous land in the east of the empire. The girl decided that it was there that she would start life from scratch. Katerina finally stayed in this big, beautiful city. She felt that this was where she should be now, and that when the man arrived carrying a box in his hands, he told her to follow him, that this was the place. The girl stood and looked at the short, plump man with papers in his hands. A fire appeared in the girl's eyes. She could not believe what she was seeing. The man said to her that this was the house. He added that this was exactly the property she was looking for. The house really looked very large. It seemed that one could not dream of anything bigger. The reason Catherine chose the Duchy of Christopher as her new home, but Catherine. It took a lot of money and time to leave Orleans, and although the girl was shocked that her old bank account was closed, the coachman treated her with compassion and helped her through this difficult situation. That is why she managed to avoid a crisis. About 15 days after she settled into the hotel, Katerina was waiting for good news, while she was surviving by selling her belongings. That day, luck was on her side because she managed to find a nice property on the outskirts of the city. The property turned out to be the very old estate that Catherine had been looking at when she arrived here. The girl was looking at an old, shabby house with a realtor who was very worried. Katerina spoke to the realtor, saying that the house was really very large for such a price. He replied that it was exactly so. The realtor added that this estate is the largest residential building in the northern part of Christopher, and added that as the girl can see next to the main building, He handed the girl the papers and added that she would not find real estate for that price anywhere in Christopher. The girl looked at him silently. Holding the papers in her hands, Katerina turned and looked aside excitedly. She looked at this beautiful city with its large, wide street. Standing on the edge of the cliff, the girl said that there was a very beautiful view of the city from here. The realtor added that it was also close to the boat port. It was a really beautiful place to enjoy the ocean views. The girl turned to the realtor and asked him why this property was so cheap. She was worried about this question. The realtor replied in a trembling voice that it was because she was really lucky. He added that she would not find such a property anywhere else, and everything seemed strange to Katerina, no matter how much she thought about it. The realtor turned to the girl and asked her what else she thought, and added that the building was only dirty inside because it hadn't been used for a long time, but the house was still in good condition. Turning around, the girl asked what the catch was. She knew for sure that something was wrong. The realtor kindly told her that there was no trick here. The girl was just very lucky. The girl replied that she had nothing against this luxurious large estate with a magnificent garden and an incredible location, and concluded that she would like to buy it. Opening her umbrella, she added that it seemed to her that there were some complicating circumstances that he could not tell her about. The girl looked so relaxed and asked to terminate the contract because she had no right to make a mistake. She only had one attempt. The girl also added that she did not trust him and that his work as a mediator was over. The realtor tried to say something to her, but his voice was shaky and unclear. The girl rushed away, leaving the realtor standing alone, but he still tried to stop her. In her mind, the girl recalls that in the end, she has repeatedly encountered the fact that some aspect did not fit her criteria, and thinks that it would be better to look. The realtor runs after the girl and tries to stop her. He yells at her. The girl looked very confused. She didn't understand what exactly he had done wrong and what he was hiding. The plump realtor, trying to catch his breath, added to her that he would tell her everything honestly. Raising his index finger, the realtor finally began to tell the story. He said that if we tell the truth, there is something in this estate. And he added that there is a ghost living in the house. Even in the basement during the full moon, you can hear screams, and you can also hear a girl crying. The man himself didn't know if these rumors were true or not, but in the last 2 years, 4 contracts had been terminated. But the girl interrupted him and said that it sounded great and that she would sign the contract. The realtor was shocked that even after learning the truth, the girl was satisfied. The girl signed the contract and gave it to her husband. Having settled in her new house, the girl started cleaning, just as she was cleaning the floor and was shocked that everything around was. The girl thinks that she is really happy to have found a new place to live, but it will need a lot of cleaning, and she wonders why there are so many rooms. Holding a broom in her hands, she looked out the window. The girl was shocked by what she saw there. She opened it in an instant, and it seemed as if the breath of fresh air gave her strength. The girl saw what a beautiful view opens from this room. She did not regret buying this house. You could tell by the girl's face that she was completely satisfied with her new life. She really liked it. She was happy. She caught herself thinking that it was nothing serious. She just needed to be patient. And unlike Ornatute, it was a heavenly place. The girl had a good idea that she should light candles in each room because it would take a long time to run the electricity. The girl was curious about where the candles from the store she had bought in Orléans had gone. Going down the stairs, the girl remembers the words of the realtor who said that the house is haunted. But the girl actively began to drive away bad thoughts and thought that it was all nonsense. Despite the realtor's warnings, the girl is determined to go down to the basement. Going down, the girl notices that a light is on behind the basement door. She finds this strange because it shouldn't be there. The brave girl decides to open the door and look inside the room. The girl was shocked when she saw what was happening there. She couldn't believe her eyes. She saw something in front of her that looked like a seal, and it really surprised her. In the middle of this dark and scary basement, the girl hears a voice that says that whoever takes possession of it will become the ruler of the entire world. The girl started to run away from there, but she couldn't believe how this was possible. But in reality, the girl was extremely angry because there was such a mess around. The girl tried to wipe off this seal and wondered what kind of scoundrel had left so much dirt on the floor. She was interested in one thing: whether it was really impossible to wash the floor before writing something on it. The girl did not know what would happen sooner, whether she would wash. While the girl was cleaning, she heard someone asking her who she was. The girl turned around, very surprised. She was curious who had come to her. She was looking at the mysterious boy who was wearing a hood and looked very mysterious. The guy put his sword to her neck and added that he actually asked who she was. He continued to ask the girl if she was her father's watchdog and was very surprised that she had even crept here when she had one question. Who was this person? The guy had wide, purple eyes, fair, even porcelain skin, and he generally had an appearance that was out of. Standing next to him, Katerina wondered if he was the former owner of this house. The boy told the girl that she was well disguised, while the girl herself no longer believed her previous opinion. The guy started going at the girl and told her that anyone would mistake her for an ordinary housewife, and added that he had almost been cheated. While he continued that every day more and more progress could be seen, the girl thought that she could no longer listen to him. The girl shouted at him to wipe it, but the guy didn't understand what she was talking about. The girl turned to the boy, telling him that she had no idea what was going on here and ordered him to start wiping the dirt off the spot. It turns out that when the guy entered the room, he left dirty traces. Katerina reproached him that she had spent a lot of time washing the floor, and he had ruined everything. The girl also added that it was impolite to brandish one's sword, and not only that he had barged into her house unceremoniously, she asked him if he might want her to report the attempt on her life. The guy approached Katerina and told her that it wasn't funny. The guy leaned over to the girl and asked her if it wasn't too obvious that she was pretending to know nothing. The guy walked away, waved his hand, and added that he was in a good mood today. Katerina looked at him and didn't understand what was happening. The guy added that if she told the truth, the girl remembered how, as a child, her mother, stroking her head, told her never to approach wizards on the street. The woman added that if she wanted to live a long and happy life, she should do as her mother told her and asked her to never forget. The girl finally realized that in front of her stood an unusual guy, a real wizard. But while the girl was lost in her thoughts, the boy did not stop and continued to tell her to tell him what her goal was. The girl did not expect to meet a wizard in such a place. It seems like the last thing she could think about. The girl realized that she shouldn't give herself away. She shouldn't show him that she was really. Katerina waved her hand and told him that she didn't know what kind of misunderstanding had happened, but her goal was to clean up the mess, and unlike the guy, she wasn't in such a good mood. And she added to him that he needed to stop acting like he was in his own house, and insisted that either he would help her or he would be better off leaving. Meanwhile, the young wizard froze in place and could not understand what this girl was saying. She asked him to wait a moment while he still stood there wondering what exactly she was going to do. Suddenly, the girl pulled a small piece of paper from her chest. Katerina handed him a piece of paper and emphasized that these papers were proof that she, Katerina Panya, was the owner of this estate. The girl continued that according to these papers, all the land, the house, the basement, and even the sky. Katerina began to snatch the papers from the boy's hands, telling him that if he hadn't gotten it yet, she could read the document to him herself. The guy asked the girl if Katerina Panya had purchased this land and this estate. She told him that this was how she had acquired the land. You could see from the guy how confused he was. He turned to the girl, saying that she was the new owner of this place, and at first decided. The girl added that it must be hard to forget such a face, even after seeing it once, but she could not remember where she had seen it. The guy looked away from the girl, saying that she would be better off covering her cleavage. The girl covered her mouth with her hand, began to laugh, and added to him that she thought it would be quicker if. Katerina also noticed that he was quite polite for a first-time acquaintance. The guy turned his head and told the girl that in that case he would leave. The girl grabbed his cloak and asked him to stop. The girl added, asking him if he could leave the light on, explaining that she had no candles. The boy looked at the girl silently, not knowing what to say to her. And the girl eagerly awaited his answer, hoping that he would agree. From that day on, a peaceful life began, because the girl was most disturbed by the Thanks to this, the girl was able to focus on tidying up the estate. And since it is really very large, it took the girl quite a few days to clean it completely. Therefore, now the girl is enjoying a rare moment of rest, which she could not afford before. After making a cup of black tea, the girl realized that there was indeed peace and tranquility around her, something she had really been missing. Stretching her arms, the girl added that there was nothing better than time alone with herself. She was really glad to be out of that house. The girl heard a voice telling her that she definitely looked happy, but the girl was not expecting guests. The same guy from the basement was sitting in front of the girl, but this time he looked completely different. The guy started asking Katerina if she had heard any strange sounds at night. The girl replied that she had not heard anything. He asked again if there had been any unusual visions or if she had felt that the estate was shaking. The girl replied that there had been nothing of the sort. Then the guy asked her if she had nightmares that night. The girl replied that she had not had any nightmares. Katerina sat there, not understanding how this could have happened. She was definitely not happy about the uninvited guest. The girl wondered why this man appeared just when the water for tea was boiling. And instead of asking where it would be better to sit, he just sat wherever he wanted without even asking permission. The girl was outraged by such an appearance, and even more so by the fact that he was now sitting at the table. The boy told her that if he bothered her so much, why didn't she start looking for another estate? But propping his chin with his hand, the boy told her that apparently the girl didn't like social conversations. And the girl aptly noticed that they were having exactly such a conversation now. Katerina caught herself thinking that she was being too tactless and that she didn't really mean to respond like that. But she didn't know how she should do it if it was true. The girl told the boy that now that the boy had mentioned it, the girl remembered. The mediator had talked about something similar. She remembered that he had told her that a ghost supposedly lived in the basement of the estate. The guy was a little shocked that the girl had been warned about this, but she bought the estate anyway. When he asked her about it, he heard the answer as if it was. The girl didn't understand why she was answering his question at all, especially since she was making excuses. Maybe it was because his face was driving her crazy. Katerina had almost forgotten how he had looked before, like a vagrant from. The girl didn't know what exactly had affected her so much. Maybe it was the situation. Looking into her mug of tea, the girl realized that she was embarrassed to look him in the eye. It occurred to Katerina that perhaps it had been quite dark last time, and she might have been mistaken. But the girl continued that if he got all the answers to the questions he was interested in, why shouldn't he leave? The boy looked as if he wasn't going to go anywhere. And he thought about what the girl had told him. She, in turn, was already seriously alarmed by this. She turned to him and asked how difficult the question was, why it required such long reflections. The boy told her that it was enough for today. But the girl couldn't let him get away with it. She asked him who said that he decides and added that this time she would let him go because of her goodwill. But the guy got up from the table and for some reason reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. The guy took money out of his pocket and put it on the table. He told the girl that it was payment for the tea she had kindly offered him. The girl stood stunned and could not understand what kind of fee this was. When she finally realized what had happened, the guy was no longer around. but she still continued to yell at him for this indecency. The girl stood there and didn't understand why all the city men behaved like this. Does he really think that if he has a good appearance, he has the right to behave like this? The girl thinks that's fine, and she wants to see how much the city guy spends on tea. The girl is very surprised and looks at the bills the guy gave her. She can't decide if he was joking or not. The excited girl says that he left her 100 laid. And 100 laid is... This is enough money to hire 6 maids for a whole month. The girl was extremely surprised by the guy's generosity. Holding the money in her hands and remembering him, the girl could not understand who he really was. From the moment the guy went to the girl for tea and left her 100 lei, 5 whole days have passed. The girl decided to go grocery shopping, holding her list in her hands and checking to see if she had bought everything. She seemed to agree in her mind that she hadn't forgotten anything. Something caught the girl's attention. She looked at it with such curiosity. It turns out that her attention was drawn to a bulletin board, near which there was a crowd of people. The girl, out of curiosity, approached the bulletin board, mentally imagining what could have happened. Perhaps the emperor had passed away or something like that. But on the board, she saw that Archduke Caesar, after 2 years of wandering, had carried out the emperor's order. The girl thought that nothing, and in a moment, the girl, looking at the poster, realized that this man seemed familiar to her. It turned out to be Mr. 100 Ladov, the very one who came to her for tea. The girl began her thoughts aloud by saying that the cheekbones were a little different, and that the man on the poster was certainly handsome even for an archduke. But that tramp looked much more handsome. Adding, the girl turned around when she heard someone addressing her with words that if anyone had heard her, they would have thought that she actually knew this person. A man appeared before her, introducing himself as the chief of police named Mel Furbuck, adding that he was... Catherine told him that she did not quite understand what was happening in the center. Therefore, she dared to ask him what was the emperor's order that the archduke had to fulfill. The girl was extremely surprised. She asked him if he meant the same Gorsharop, the ruler of which can be compared to the abilities of the emperor himself because he has very rare abilities. This creature is responsible for burning down the largest kingdom in the southern part of the empire. And also, the girl couldn't believe that this was the same tramp she had tried to get to wash the floor in her basement. The girl thought that if she had known about it earlier, she would have been able to restrain her anger and behave more gently with him. While the officer added to her that he had heard that she was the new owner of the estate on the mountain, and added that if she needed any help, she could always turn to him. While feeding the cat, the girl thought about how she would have to take care of the garden again, and whether she would be kicked out of Christopher's before she could get everything in order here. Bowing her head, the girl thought that if it was still quiet, then perhaps he had forgotten what had happened that day. If he was an ex-duke, then he must have more important things to do than this. She started talking to the cat, saying that she was jealous because he could... This pleasant conversation was interrupted by something, a very loud bang. Turning around, the girl saw that part of her house was destroyed and began to wonder if she was suddenly asleep. She sees part of some monster addressing someone, saying how the human race dared to challenge him. In front of this monster stood none other than the Archduke with a fearless look. While the girl stared in amazement at this spectacle, the Archduke drew his majestic sword and swung it. The monster turned to the boy and told him not to even think about running away because he was going to eat him. Raising his paw, he added that he would slowly chew through every tendon in his body. But before he could even finish, the boy rushed towards him with incredible speed. Everything happened so quickly that even the monster himself did not have time to understand anything. Like an ugly, terrible head, it was already flying to the ground. He was Archduke Caesar. He was a fearless, brave warrior who fought evil. The girl called him. She was very angry about what happened here. Grabbing him by the shoulder, she turned him around, asking him why he was in her house again and what kind of terrible monster it was. The guy looked at her in surprise and asked the monster again as if he didn't understand what she was talking about. The girl drew his attention to the goat's head lying on the floor. The guy told her that it was nonsense. Why didn't she calm down first? Katerina looked at him angrily and asked if he had decided to joke with her now. The house had been put in order with such difficulty, and now it was destroyed. The girl asked. The next moment, the house looked the same as before. The girl was very surprised by this turn of events. The guy turned to her, reminding her that he had said that this was nonsense, adding that how could a girl see the house that she had so persistently cleaned remain without a single ruin? The girl is surprised that a person capable of using such strong magic is in Christopher's fiefdom. Catherine dared to ask him if he was Archduke Caesar. The girl was very worried about his answer. She was interested in what he would say. Would he say that he was the owner of these lands? But the boy told her that it wasn't him, and that he was often told that they looked very similar. The girl mentally called the guy a liar because she knew the truth. Looking at the sky, the girl notices that he has exactly the same face, but it was safe to say that there was nothing good to be done by contacting such a person, so the girl asked him to wait a moment. Having taken out the book in which the money was hidden, the girl decided to get it from there. And to give it to him, during this time, she turned to him, saying that she was returning his money to him and asking him not to appear at her house again. The guy was surprised that even after what she saw here, she was going to stay in this estate. He told her that he thought it would be better to spend the money on buying a new property. The girl was again determined that she was not going to leave this estate. She asked him if she had not. As the guy grabbed her hand in which she was holding the money, the guy asked her if she wasn't scared, telling her that if she dies here, she won't be able to open her mouth to report it to the police. The girl remembers what her mother told her. She said that people with magical abilities. The mother added that she wasn't sure about other colors, but she knew for sure that you had to be very careful around those with purple eyes. The girl was very excited and realized that she was not mistaken when she saw the purple eyes. The radiance in his eyes last time, such was his true essence. The guy added that he could not guarantee that everything would go as smoothly as it did today. The guy added that these fearsome creatures are without human form. They want this estate, or more precisely, they want the land on which it is built. Adding money to the money in the young girl's hands, I decided to give her a little advice, saying that next time she could lose not only her property, but also her life. Finally, he added that the girl should think carefully about his proposal. After these last words, he disappeared into the mist, leaving 1,000 lei to the girl. Apparently, with this gesture, he is hinting in every way that she should stop bothering him and go away. Katerina thought that now that she knew who he really was, if she continued, she might find herself in a very bad— While putting away the books, the girl suddenly notices a small piece of paper hidden in the shelf. The girl was surprised by this find, because opening it, she saw that it was a photograph of a woman she knew very well. Looking at her, she could not believe what she was seeing. She was shocked. It turned out that it was none other than her mother, whom she loved very much. She was everything to Katerina. The time spent together was the best moment in her life. She felt as if the whole world belonged to her and she had nothing to fear with her by her side. When 10 years have passed since the very moment Katerina's mother disappeared, the little girl was very curious about why her mother had abandoned her. The girl harbored resentment towards her mother, but she continued to miss her. The girl was surprised that this portrait was still in such good condition, as if it had been painted very recently. Katerina realized that everything was exactly as she had thought. Her mother had not died. But why was her portrait lying in this estate, and how was her mother connected to this place? These were her main questions. Even now that the girl had settled in Christopher, when so many difficulties had fallen upon her, the girl did not know if it was a coincidence that she found something related to her mother in this particular estate. But Katerina did not forget the boy's words that if what happened recently were to happen again, the girl did not know which path would be right and safe for her. But she knew one thing. She could not lose the last thread to her mother. The girl decided that if everything turned out like this, she could not back down. She would not leave here until she found something that could help her find her mother. 4 days have passed since that moment, and a lot has happened. In order to try to find more clues about their mother, Katerina and Rosa searched the entire estate. Rosa is the first maid that Katerina hired with the money she had left. Rosa found many hidden things. As you would expect from an old estate, there were many hidden places and unknown corners where any clues could be. The previous owner of the estate had an unusual hobby. The girl thought that if she hadn't seen the monster with her own eyes that day, she would have thought so. Katerina was sitting wrapped in a blanket and reading a book when she suddenly heard a noise outside the door. It was her maid, Rosa. She asked Katerina if she was sleeping, and the girl wondered what could have brought the girl here at such a late hour. The maid looked very scared, so Katerina asked her what had happened. The girl turned to her mistress in a trembling voice, saying that she knew her behavior seemed inappropriate. Katerina hugged her assistant and thought that the girl was shaking terribly. Maybe she had a nightmare. The frightened maid grabbed Katerina's hand and asked her not to go anywhere. saying that it was dangerous there and adding that it seemed that there was someone in the estate besides them. Katerina told her that this could not be, but the girl asked the landlady if she had heard strange sounds coming from the corridor every night. The maid continued that it was a woman's laughter, the sounds of a child running, and even the noise of stringed instruments. Katerina remembered that this was what Caesar's strange questions about strange, frightening sounds at night, strange visions, or even nightmares were about. But before, the girl thought that it was some kind of delusion and that he was out of his mind. Katerina turned to the maid, saying that she needed to check something, added that she would be quick and that the girl should not worry, and ordered her to rest in her room. Rosa was, of course. Katerina turned to the girl and addressed her, saying that the house belonged to her, and that no one had the right to enter here without her permission. Rosa shouted after her mistress, who was walking further and further away from her towards an unknown evil. Walking through one of the halls, the girl thinks that she should hurry up if the sounds only. The girl decided that until she found any clues as to where to look for her, the girl realized that it was too quiet around her. She couldn't hear anything except the rain, and decided it would be better to check in the basement. But turning her head and looking out the window, the girl realizes that she sees none other than Archduke Caesar there. The girl was surprised that he appeared here in person, because he was the last person she expected to see here today. She was worried about what he might be doing outside in such heavy rain. Approaching him, the girl took him by the shoulder to get his attention and asked him why he was standing in front of someone else's house. But the guy in turn simply fell off his feet right on top of Katerina. The girl didn't understand what was happening to him. The girl tried to talk to him and ask what was wrong with him, but of course she didn't get an answer from him. When she touched him, she realized that he was cold, even icy. It seemed strange to her, even though he had been standing and getting wet in the rain. The girl decided that if she left him here with one of them, there would be even more problems. The girl was warming herself by the fireplace and thought she was a little wet, but was grateful that she managed to warm up very quickly. Looking at the young man, she recalled that she very clearly remembered how she had to drag him into the estate. She recalled that a strength she had never known had awakened within her. Covering him with a blanket, the girl thought that he would soon feel better. The girl, of course, understood that he was not really human, but she still did not understand why he was standing in the rain and what he was doing there. He was as if on the verge of life and death. Suddenly, an ominous aura appeared in the room, as if enveloping them and penetrating every corner of the room. Katerina heard that it was enough and gave it to them. The girl was worried, but she did not understand what exactly this aura was asking of her. The voice continued to speak to her, telling her to hand over the precious thing to them in exchange for the fulfillment of any wish. That thing that destroys the darkness of inhumanity. So even this estate, it is darker than a shadow, more disgusting than dirt with the stench of rotten water. Since childhood, it has manifested itself every time she has almost forgotten about it. The girl again heard the voice, as if bewitching her, beckoning her to exchange that precious thing for a wish. But the girl was very stubborn and replied that he was too noisy and ordered him to be quiet, and she added that if it came close, she would make sure it never appeared again, anywhere. The voice started saying that it was strange. It was really strange that it wasn't working. And I started wondering what kind of child this was. The girl watched as this entity disappeared, wondering why nothing had worked out for him. The girl sighed with relief, but in her mind, she couldn't even imagine what it was. The only thing the girl knew for sure was that this entity and the boy who lay unconscious on her couch had the same nature. The girl noticed that although they were similar in essence, it was the lowest creature. The girl thought that it was repeating the same thing over and over again. The girl remembered that this entity had bothered her mother as well, but she had done everything in her power. And she was already thinking about plans for tomorrow. The last thing the girl saw before she closed her eyes was a boy. She was not at all interested in what happened to him, and she was also curious about why he was standing in the rain. So she fell asleep on the next couch next to the strange guy. Katerina was soundly asleep at the moment when a strong and tall guy carried her in his arms. The boy carefully laid the girl in her bed and covered her with a blanket. He watched as the girl slept sweetly and allowed himself to touch her fiery orange hair. He didn't just look at her like any other girl, he admired her. Catherine's mother learned of her husband's infidelity with one of the maids with whom her husband had an affair. She begged and pleaded for mercy, but her mother was adamant. The mother ordered her little daughter, and she continued that Katerina should learn an important lesson from this. She should, without a single drop of doubt, step over those who have lost all fear and decide to gather at a peak that is not theirs. Katerina remembers her mother's indifferent face, as if it was not she who had faced betrayal, but someone else. The girl recalls that her mother wanted the girl to be like her when she grew up, but Katerina was so young that her thoughts were very naive. Her mother added that it was all because she had the right to do so. Katerina woke up in fright and grabbed the blanket she was wrapped in. There was a very strong fear on her face. Walking through the corridors of the estate, the girl seems to wonder why she had such a dream. If she had to have a dream about her mother, it had better be filled with good memories. Her next question was why she was in her bed. At the end of the corridor, the girl saw the same guy. He was moving around by himself. Looking at him, the girl was glad that he felt better, but she wondered why he was still here. The girl, in her usual manner, began to yell at the boy to listen to her. But the guy interrupted the girl's emotional outburst by pointing with his finger to tell her to be quiet, and added that she should look out the window. The girl at that very moment turned her head and looked out the window. She was curious to see what had attracted his attention so much. There were two people standing on the street. The girl immediately asked him who they were because it seemed like he knew them. The girl drew attention to their armor. There was no doubt that these were Imperial Knights. The boy told the girl that these faithful dogs of the Emperor were up to something here after those events. And he added that, as he had said before, if she remained in this estate, she would face even greater danger, and added that people were no better. He began to tell me that the Imperial Knights could kill if they were given an acceptable excuse, No one would even bat an eye and everyone would forget about it. The stunned girl asked the guy what he meant by that. Could they really harm her? He looked calm and added that, to be honest, such an outcome is possible. But the girl was as adamant as her mother. She thanked the boy for warning her. However, she had no intention of leaving the estate. The boy was surprised that for her, everyone was the same, so he asked her. The guy told her that it sounded pretty sad and asked her if she knew who carried her to the bedroom when the girl was not at a loss and answered him by asking if he knew who the girl was who had saved the man from death, who had frozen in the rain. The girl added that because of him, she got soaked to the bone and caught a cold, but she never heard a single word of gratitude from him. He told her that she looked quite healthy now, but he was in no mood to argue with her. The girl began to tie her hair, and the boy asked where she was going, and added that she could not pack her things and go wherever she wanted in this weather. But the girl replied that the guy looked at her and didn't understand what the girl was going to do, so he asked her. The girl, grabbing a shovel, replied that she had no choice but to defend herself and her home. The guy came up from behind, half hugging her, and tried to take the shovel out of her hands. Leaning down to her ear, he told her that she had no self-preservation instinct at all. The girl was very shocked by the boy's action. At this time, two people who were hanging around on the street went inside the estate and saw this picture. The Imperial Knights said they had nothing personal, but according to the order, they were to kill Catherine, and it was obvious that they recognized this guy. The girl didn't think they had already made it inside. The situation was getting tense. She needed to hurry, but she didn't have time to blink when the guy rushed towards them. He quickly overpowered one of the knights by hitting him in the face. The fragile Catherine watched in amazement. The girl was shocked, but the boy continued to beat them. They only managed to scream that they were sorry, asked for forgiveness and mercy. The boy told them that they had appeared hiding in the bushes like rats, and added that he asked what they thought about this, namely, Ser Domian Rodien and Ser Cassin Cloan clenching their fists. And the girl thought about the fact that he himself appeared like this all. The boy continued by saying that even more than that, there was a woman living on the estate all alone, and asked if they were going to make excuses for not knowing about it. They apologized and apologized for disturbing Miss Catherine. The knight began to say that they were only carrying out the emperor's order, but before they didn't expect to see Archduke Caesar himself here. The guys are really confused that he came to the defense of this girl. Catherine asked him if he not only looked like the Archduke, but also had the same name. The guy simply replied that it was a coincidence that he was often called that. One of the knights was braver and decided to ask what Mr. Caesar was doing here, while the other was afraid that he would get screwed again and asked him why he asked that. The guy put his arm around the girl's shoulder and continued, "Does he really need an excuse?" In order to see his beloved. The girl really looked very surprised. Unlike the guy, he was too calm. At that moment, everyone in the room was shocked by these words, except Caesar, of course. But he continued that uninvited guest. The guy turned to the girl and asked if that was true. The girl thought that such a way out of the situation, but realizing that the guy was trying to help her, she decided to play along with him. She replied that it was true and that she was very disappointed that their night full of love was ruined. The guys simultaneously started shouting that they were apologizing and that they had no excuses, while the couple continued to say that something special was supposed to happen tonight. Caesar continued that he understood they had nothing to say and noted that they seemed to be still unconscious. He asked them to come to him before they went home. The boy leaned towards the girl and said that he thought he had fully paid his debt to the woman who had saved the man from death, who had frozen in the rain. The girl was not impressed. She knew that there must be a reason why he helped. He couldn't have done it just for the sake of helping. The boy turned to the knights and asked. The boy scolded the girl, asking her what she was going to do with that shovel and how much she underestimated what the Imperial Knights were capable of, and ordered her, if she didn't have any more lives to spare, not to behave so frivolously next time. The guy noticed that the girl was all cold and invited her to sit closer to the fireplace. The girl sincerely thanked him for helping her in this difficult situation. The guy smiled at her and replied that he was fine. Katerina mentioned that she wanted to return the money he left last time, but the guy refused and said that he would not take back the money he had once given. The guy leaned towards the girl and said, although. There was silence and they looked at each other. She didn't understand what he wanted to do next. The guy leaned even closer to her. The girl visibly fainted. But the guy just said that he liked the book and wanted to borrow it for a few days and asked her not to say no because he would take it anyway. The surprised girl said that of course she wouldn't mind if he didn't take her. The guy replied that it was time for him to go and locked the door behind him. The girl remained sitting on the sofa, looking into the empty room. He seriously scared the girl. She blushed and, putting her hand to her cheek, she tried to come to her senses. The maid turned to her mistress, asking if she had heard the news. It seemed that the girl asked Percival while spreading jam on her bread, and you could tell by her expression that she was not happy about the news. The girl replied that of course she had not heard, and Rose asked her not to tell her that she did not know him, because while eating her sandwich, the girl mentally cannot believe that he is called the Paladin of Percival Benedict, being the one in whose veins the blood of the Emperor flowed, was considered an outstanding man, who could boast not only of noble origin, but also of talent. The girl recalls how the boy approached her and said that it was such a nice room for an ordinary maid. He also the guy stood through the window stroking Katerina's cheeks, but turned to her and asked if it was Anna. The guy continues by saying that perhaps the name Anna Orlin, which only suits a provincial commoner, is also a made-up name. The girl mentions that Percival is not Lily. Catherine recalls that he was her outlet when she existed unnoticed in Orleans. He was her former lover. The girl at that time lived like a bird in a cage, and he was a free hawk flying in the sky. She couldn't resist the temptation to be with him, but she had no warmth for those memories with him. After all, it had all ended on a very bad note. Katerina thought that if she didn't have a single free moment to think about him, then he probably didn't have time for it either. And he probably had already forgotten about her. So she didn't attach much importance to it. The girl hears someone in the courtyard start shouting that he is wasting his nerves, which he has honed to serve the imperial family. and that this is too much. The boy sits and angrily pulls the grass and says that he can't believe that there isn't a single gardener on such a large estate. It was Sir Dominion, and although you wouldn't tell by his appearance, he was very grumpy. He had been punished last night with 10 days of tending to the girl's garden. The boy was very upset and asked when he would be done with weeding with his poor hands. Catherine, holding her cat in her arms, thinks it's good that she doesn't have to spend money to hire a gardener, but she wonders if the Archduke can use the power of the Imperial Knights in this way. Every time Katerina sees her cat, she feels as if he could grow 10 times bigger, adding that just recently he was so tiny. The girl remembers that her mother told her something similar. She really wanted to see her. Suddenly, the girl was struck by the thought of where she had put her mother's portrait. The girl seemed confused because she couldn't have lost it. The girl remembers that she put it in a red book because it attracts attention, adding that it could get lost, so it would be better to hide it between the pages of the book. But the girl remembered that it was this red book that Archduke Caesar had taken from her. The girl was confused because she had frivolously given it into the boy's hands. The girl ran away, screaming that it would be terrible if he accidentally touched the book, because it contained the only surviving portrait of her mother. The girl begged very much that nothing should happen to the book. The girl escaped to the basement and entered a room where she saw a magic circle that once said that whoever possessed. Looking at him, she thought that she did not want to resort to such methods at all, but she had no other choice. The girl took the mop again and began to try to wipe the circle. The girl thought that if she first met Caesar when she was trying to wash away this magic circle, then there was nothing left but to summon him in this way. While trying to mop the floor, the girl thinks that she should have checked the book before giving it to her. The girl hears a voice that addressed her and said that for some reason he thought it was her. The guy appeared, smiling at her and saying that only she was capable of doing such nonsense with a magic circle. The girl, folding her arms, began to apologize for calling him so unexpectedly and added that she had a request for him, which the boy asked in surprise. The girl continued that she really needed the book he had recently borrowed and could he return it right now? The guy told her that this was nonsense and that he could do it. The guy took the girl by the hand and said that in that case they needed to get to his house. The girl was surprised. But just taking the guys by the hand, without even considering his proposal, they were in a dark basement in his luxurious mansion in an instant. It all happened so quickly that she didn't even have time to blink. The girl thought that his house was quite cozy and comfortable. The girl realized that if she was not mistaken, this place was a residence located in Christopher. The girl thought that if she asked him again, he would again say that he was often told that. At this time, the girl's thoughts were interrupted by the boy calling her over, causing the girl to turn around. He held a book in his hands and said the name of the book. The girl said that it seemed to be the name and was glad that the book was found quickly. The guy noted that it was the only book with pictures embedded in the middle of the pages, and the girl started to babble, saying that he seemed to remember. And she wondered if he had even read it, but the portrait of her mother was still there, so the girl could calm down. Catherine decided to ask Caesar if he knew the woman from her portrait. The guy told her that unfortunately, he didn't remember knowing him and asked who she was. Looking at her mother's portrait, the girl replied that this woman was the one she was looking for. The girl began to tell me that the portrait was hidden on the shelves in the bedroom where she now lives. She thought that it seemed that Caesar did not know everything. It is possible that the mother stayed at the estate for a short period of time. Sitting at the table, the guy turned around and said that Glenn could come into the room. The butler turned to his master and said that he had something very important to tell him. The butler began to explain that it was about a council in honor of the return of the paladins of the papal curia. It was clear that the girl was very surprised. You could see how annoyed the boy was, but he said that those fools from the church would never calm down. The girl hears the boy say that they need to organize a goat festival. The guy sat and told me that it was necessary to let go of superstitions, such as if you throw goat shit at a person, blessings would await them. And he continued that if you throw shit in their face, they would shut up and go away. The girl added that his jokes were too much. The boy replied that he was not joking. The girl continued that it was probably time for her to go home because the guy replied that he would like to offer her to stay longer, but that you can. The girl continued by answering that she didn't understand where it could be of any. He turned to the girl, calling her name and asking her to give him her hand. The girl caught herself thinking that it was strange. It was strange that every time he took her hand, her heart began to tremble. The girl caught herself thinking that he was just showing his kindness, that there was nothing special about it, and noticed the boy again began to instruct the girl, saying that it would be better for her if she remembered the name of the book that was so important to her, so that she would not have to face such a problem as today again. But the girl allowed herself to turn to him, asking how she could call him if she needed him. The guy was very surprised by the girl's frankness. Katerina thought she had gone mad, that she was speaking like a girl pleading with her lover to whom she was indifferent, and could not understand what was wrong with her about the meeting. The guy was surprised that he was the one who could be needed and asked the girl, and the girl added that she could never know what would happen in this estate, added that she could not erase the magic circle every time Caesar needed her. The guy replied that she didn't have to tell him about such little things because he could know everything anyway. The guy replied that if she asked, he would and put something in her hand. It turned out to be a key. He put it in the girl's hand. She was worried because she didn't understand how the keys would help. But the guy said that she should use it when he needed it, and that as for the way to use it, he asked her to figure it out on her own. The guy told her that he was no longer interested in finding out why she would need him. At that moment, the girl asked him to stop making fun of her, but told him not to expect too much. At this time, the maids turned to the girl and said that next time they would prepare herbal tea and madeleines, which the girl liked so much. They asked her to definitely come back and said goodbye to her. Once at home, the girl thought that since she couldn't ask him how to use this key, she first needed to hide it well so as not. Rosa burst into the room and was very happy that her mistress had returned home. Catherine asked the maid what had happened, and the girl replied that now was not the time to stand as a pillar, because right in front of the estate there was a line of carriages of the paladins of the papal curia. The girl was shocked by this news and remembered that they say that this estate is a breeding ground for the devil, and that its owner is a servant of Satan. The girl caught herself thinking that they were pursuing the same goal as the imperial knights who had entered the house, but this time Caesar was not with her, and she did not know what to do. But the girl decided that she could not always rely on Caesar and that she needed to fend for herself. However, she could not rule out. Looking at the package, the girl thought that there was nothing wrong with being overly cautious. One of the paladins began to shout at Domian, saying that he had not a drop of pride left. He asked the boy if he was not ashamed to be gardening in such a place, and added that it seemed that the imperial knights had finally outlived themselves. The gardener asked him why he was shouting so loudly, because even if he spoke in a whisper, he would still be able to understand. The girl turned to Domian and asked him to stop arguing with them. And approaching her, the guy was surprised by the girl's appearance and asked what it was. But the girl who put a bag on her head replied that she had a big boil popping out of her head. So she asked them not to pay attention to her appearance and said he replied that Sir Mel had arrived with the paladins and that they continued to claim that the mistress of the house was a follower of the devil. The girl was not surprised by this at all. She knew that, as expected, the only reason for their appearance here was the magic circle in the basement. The officer greeted the girl. He looked very friendly, and the girl in turn greeted him in return. The officer apologized for this unexpected visit, but added that the church had given orders to cleanse the area of evil energy. As soon as the paladins returned from an expedition in which they conquered monsters, they were immediately sent here. The girl understood that if these paladins had just returned, they were the same ones who were supposed to return here with Percival. The paladin began to shout that the boy should be more polite to them if they did not want them to make him regret not letting them inside the estate. The girl was a little uncomfortable with the mess that was inside the house, because not even a month had passed since she became its owner. The paladin noticed that he felt a strong, ominous energy nearby, which made his nose itch. Pointing his finger at Katerina's cat, he said that this cat was a puppet of the devil. The girl turned to the officer, asking if he had brought a charlatan to her house. Sir Mel, in turn, turned to Carlos, saying that no matter how you look at it, it's just an ordinary cat. He started shouting at everyone present, saying that how dare they doubt the paladin's words. The girl wondered why Merlika suddenly started behaving like this, and got angry. Domian turned to the paladin, saying that he obviously didn't understand the need to know the measure and expressed his indignation. When the boy tried to hit him, the paladin replied that he didn't understand what kind of stupid questions these were. Having pushed the paladin, everyone present noticed that his wig had flown off and everyone was shocked. He started to fight back tears, saying that it was his wig. He was obviously very worried that everyone present would find out the truth. Everyone present burst into laughter and began to mock him for being bald. Even Catherine's cat started making fun of him. He said that you saw how his wig flew off his head and everyone was amazed that he could talk. Were Sir Carlos's words true? The paladin turned to Catherine, saying that he was right. Someone burst into this action, saying that it was deadly boring. The paladin looked away, and the boy continued that this was not just boredom, but a very putrid picture. It was Sir Percival who stood there. He continued. Katerina caught herself thinking that, as expected, he was part of a punitive expedition. The girl was glad that she decided to put a bag over her head. He said that if he were in his place, he would have fallen to the ground long ago from shame, and Carlos replied that he could not believe what Percival was saying. Could he really let a demon escape that was right under his nose? A crazy smile appeared on Percival's face, and he asked if he dared to contradict him. He asked if he really thought he had followed him here as he had trusted his stone head. He asked him not to be mistaken and added that it was all because the morning in this peaceful place seemed boring. He added that perhaps for such a loyal dog as he, everything is different. But for him, participation in a punitive expedition is enough to be included in the ranks of the dogs of the paper. The girl realized that, as expected, his manners had not changed at all. He was completely unsuitable for the paladin profession. Stroking the boy on the head, he continued that if he understood everything, they should finish this performance and added that they should return to the hotel because he was starting to feel hungry. Looking at the boy, Percival added that something still seemed really strange to him. He glanced at the girl and continued that the woman looked very much like one of his acquaintances. He continued by saying that those sparkling eyes, voice, and even body all remind him of that woman. That's why he feels disgusted. He approached the girl and struck the wood with his hand a little higher than Katerina was standing. And he continued that, who knows, maybe she was the same woman while the girl was trying to make sure he didn't recognize her. The guy asked the girl's name, which was to be expected because he was definitely curious about who she was. The girl only thought about what benefit he would bring her. She didn't know how to get out of this situation. Katerina remembered how Caesar was sitting on his couch and thinking about having to organize a festival, and saying that if you throw goat shit in someone's face, you should expect a blessing. The girl replied that her name was Goat Poop. The guy replied that she needed to be more careful and called her Goat Poop, adding that the only thing that made his friend Carlos human was the presence of blood. As he was leaving, he added that Carlos was very spiteful and very petty. With a wave of his hand, he got into his carriage. Finally, it was all over and they left. The girl had no doubt that when Percival mentioned that woman, he was definitely talking about her. And earlier, the girl thought that he had already forgotten about her existence, so she did not expect that everything would be exactly the opposite. The next day, there were many people in the square, and everyone was walking on this warm day. Katerina and Rosa were no exception. Katerina asked Rosa replied that of course they were beautiful, so they could be forgiven for everything, and added that beauty carried no sin. Katerina was glad that she didn't need much to be happy. She simply said that she would try to get into the front rows. The girl replied that she was fine and wished her to enjoy the parade, and added that she would meet her at the estate. As for the cat Pearlie, whom Sir Carlos called the devil's servant, he certainly became part of their family. Domian said that he was not at all interested in the demonic nature of the stray cat. And Rosa, in this world, to become a wizard, you need to make a contract with the devil. Christopher's people adore wizards and are friendly to demons. At this time, the paladins began their parade. Everyone was delighted with the pride of the papal curia. The paladins of the lilies all tried to attract his attention, but many did not believe that the day had come when they could see him in person. The girl at that time believed that ignorance can sometimes be considered a blessing. Looking at this action, the girl suddenly remembered how Percival suggested that she run away together and meet tomorrow under that little tree. Holding the girl's hand, he told her that he would wait for her. In the past, Percival had said these words to her. Of course, the girl had no intention of agreeing to this absurd proposal from Percival. At this time, when Percival was riding his horse past the girl, he noticed her. The guy was surprised by such a meeting, especially here. The girl was no less surprised that he recognized her and even simply noticed her. The boy stopped his horse very quickly and started to turn towards the girl. He looked very angry. The girl started to run away and wondered what kind of joke this was, how he was able to notice her in all this crowd. The girl thinks she was too frivolous if she met him in the city center. She will never be able to walk with her head held high, and at that moment the girl's hat flies off her. The girl found a small alley. She couldn't let them meet here. Trying to get to her place, the girl seemed to wonder if she had managed to break away from him. The girl thought that Percival would not start galloping after her everywhere with a crowd of onlookers. He was not so sick in the head. While someone grabbed the girl by the shoulder from behind, she was seriously scared. But it turned out that she had been dragged into the store and she was trying to see who it could be. But it turned out to be Domian. She asked him what he was doing here, and he replied that he had come to buy weed killer, but the owner said that he needed to look for advice, so he would be gone for a while. The girl understands this is a flower shop on the square. She thought she had gone far from the square, but it seems she made a detour and returned to where she was. The guy asked why this man was chasing her. The girl replied that if she had a lover, why would she need to hide him? The boy replied that he had heard that he had a bride to whom his parents had engaged them, and added that they said she was incredibly beautiful. Yo and Domian said Percival had a bride. She was a girl who was born weak and had many small illnesses. However, the fact of the bride's existence did not greatly affect the relationship between the girl and the boy. In those days, Catherine of Orleans' personality was quite contradictory. When she was outside, she could make puns out of her father's words. A creature in a mask woven from deceit, so even in a situation where both of them had no partners to marry, they had no future. The girl asked the guy at what point does a man open his heart to a woman so much that he suggests running away with him. The guy replied that of course this happens when a man is madly in love and asked her why she was asking about this, and continued by asking if that paladin offered to run away with him. For a moment, the room was silent. The boy understood that everything was exactly like that, but the girl did not dare to say it out loud. The guy asked if she had refused him. He didn't believe that it really happened. The girl told him that of course not. She had given her consent and they had run away on the appointed day. The boy noticed that she had been a ruthless realist since her youth, and the girl replied that she wanted to end on that note. The girl continued that if he had acquired everything he needed, it would be good to go to the estate. But at that time, the girl also thought that with the help of the power of love alone, any obstacles could be overcome. But did the guy think the same? The girl thinks that he was simply haunting her because of the— After all, they are not close enough to miss each other or regret what happened then. Finally returning home, Domian looked very happy, which could not be said about Catherine. This whole situation really made her think. Rosa noticed that her mistress was late returning home. She asked what they had bought there, and the girl replied that Domian had asked her to buy weed killer and garden tools. The girl mentally thanked Domian for working for free, but his purchases had hit her wallet hard. She thought that now she really needed to start earning money. The girl thinks it would be nice to look at the various advertisements in the newspaper and asks Rosa where today's newspaper is. But in the room where Catherine entered, Caesar was sitting. He told her that he had taken her to read first and asked if she didn't mind. The girl was surprised by Caesar's sudden appearance and asked him what his purpose was in coming here. The guy replied that he had simply come to check on her and invited her to sit down. The girl was surprised by such concern on his part, so she asked if it was really hers. The guy asked how her estate was, and he continued by asking if strange things were happening that scared her. The girl replied that she was completely fine and her maid Rosa was having a hard time getting used to it. The girl continued that Rosa had been talking about strange sounds coming from the hallway, and that she had nightmares almost every day, and added that that was why she had allocated a room next to hers, and after that, the girl missed that perhaps the whole thing was in the magic circle located in the basement. They felt that an uninvited guest was approaching the estate. They could not even imagine what awaited them. The guy turned to the girl and told her that she had been visited by an extremely tactless guest, that it smelled like a burst sewer pipe, and added that could one of the paladins pay a visit to her estate? The girl did not know how to answer. She decided to look out the window to see who had passed by. The girl thought she had successfully escaped from the meeting place with Percival, but he tracked her down and visited her estate. The girl told Caesar that she didn't need to be away for long, and the guy asked her if it was okay to go down to his place alone. The girl told him that everything was fine. Even if he heard any noise, he should not go outside. The girl thought that it was unlikely that she would be able to resolve the situation peacefully. But today she had to deal with going outside. The boy turned to the girl, saying that he had always wondered why her voice seemed familiar to him. The guy added that he thought she simply couldn't be in such a place, so he decided he was going crazy because he couldn't forget her. But his blunders turned out to be true. He addressed her, greeting her as Anna, and the girl in turn greeted him as well. The girl asked him why he had come here because it was definitely not to take out his anger on her. The guy started walking towards the girl, saying that he wanted to ask her something that day. He asked why she didn't come that day and leaned towards her, waiting for an answer. He added that so that the girl would not misunderstand him, he just wanted to satisfy his curiosity and added by asking why she was not under the tree that day. The girl looked very serious and told him that it was because she didn't want to pass. The guy looked confused. He wanted to say something to her, but he clearly couldn't. Because the girl interrupted him and added that he also did not come to this place on the same day. It wasn't just Katerina who didn't show up at the agreed-upon location on an unspecified day. The guy wasn't there either, but she decided not to ask him why. And she added that, unlike him, she has no tendency to dwell on the past. From the very beginning, the girl had no intention of participating in Percival's absurd plan, but she was curious whether Percival would really come to that tree. So as she drove past, the maid asked her if she had lost anything in that place, while Katerina carefully watched the tree. The girl, without supporting her chin with her hand, replied that it was not just that the azaleas were so beautiful, but that Percival had not come. And strangely enough, she felt relieved, as if a stone. She said that she had bathed herself enough with flowers. Now they could return to the estate. Percival was not a special person to her. While fixing his hair, the guy laughed and said to her that she had changed a lot, although it was not surprising. So much time had passed since then, and it was not necessary to expect it. The guy added that apparently he lost his mind when he went after the girl. He put the hat on the girl's head while she was confused by the gesture. The girl looked at him in surprise, and he added that on the way to her, he had been thinking about something and had come to the conclusion that it would be better for her to change her place of residence. And he added that how could he come for her soul again? He left, and the girl looked confusedly at the hat he had put on her head. The girl hears a boy turn to her and ask how she feels about returning home. The girl turns around at the boy's voice. Caesar added that unless, of course, she was eager to meet his gaze when he suddenly decided to turn around. The girl asked him if he really thought Percival would do that, and the guy, taking the girl's hand, added that although he had accidentally overheard their conversation, it was hard for him. The girl thought that she probably should have chased him away or moved the conversation to another place, but had she ever been the one who cared about what others thought? Suddenly, a buzzing sound rang out again in the girl's house. Something shook the house. The girl woke up scared and did not understand what was happening around her. Crouching down, she began to look towards her door, wondering if it was the frightening tremors. This was another monster. He looked like a horse with very long hooves. He was very happy to finally get to Eden. He also succeeded in the long-awaited challenge. The girl was shocked that her house was destroyed again. She wondered why these monsters always appeared and destroyed other people's property. And he also likes to laugh like a horse. But the girl instantly caught herself thinking that right now it was much more important where Rosa and Domian were. The girl clearly knew that this situation needed to be dealt with. The girl knew that if she rushed into battle with her bare hands, she would not come out of there alive. The girl, winding the rope around her neck, remembered that she had a key with which she could call Caesar. The girl remembers how the guy told her that he would help her if she needed him, but she doesn't know how to use him. The girl finally understood the meaning of his words, because every time Caesar came to her estate, he left it through the door. The girl realized that if she used this key and the door, she would be able to meet Caesar. The girl inserted this magic key into the lock of her door. The girl was very happy that the door had opened. She had hope for the best. Opening the door, the girl went in and didn't immediately realize where she was. But here, Caesar sat before her, writing something in his papers. He calmly turned his gaze to the girl and asked why she had decided to visit him at such an early hour. The girl was not immediately able to answer him what was the matter and mentally drove herself away, but she understood that she was unable to take her eyes off him. The girl approached him and apologized for such an unexpected visit, but added that she urgently needed his help. The girl began to tell that this time a strange monster appeared in the estate, which looked like a horse and that it breaks everything in its path. And she added that she did not know where Rosa and Domian had gone. The guy added that for such cases, he left her something useful, so she doesn't have to look for him every time. The girl replied that it was true that he gave her a key with which she could come to him, and she continued that, even if she received the key, he was not obliged to always fulfill her request and apologized. Mentally, the girl admitted that Caesar was absolutely right. The girl was already very upset because he had seen her conversation with Percival recently, and now she appeared before him again in an inappropriate form. The boy objected to the girl, saying that he didn't mean it at all and that the girl misunderstood him. He added that he didn't explain everything to her properly and apologized, admitting that it was his fault. The guy said that he was not a kind enough person to convey to everyone the meaning of the words he said, but in the current situation, he had no other choice. Caesar asked Catherine if he could look at the key. The girl, of course, replied that he could do it and handed the key to him. He looked carefully at the key and asked the girl if she really wore it around her neck all the time. The girl was surprised that he had drawn such conclusions after only looking at the key, and replied that everything was exactly like that. The girl was indignant that the boy was mocking her again and trying to hurry the boy up, because if they were late, not a stone would be left of the estate. But the boy replied that later he would replace the thread that had broken. Once at Katerina's house, the boy told her that, as he had said before, she didn't need to visit him. The girl looked in shock at the monster's head lying on the floor. The girl didn't know how this could have happened because it was the same big monster that was destroying the estate, and she was curious who could have defeated it. The boy came out with a frown and turned to his mistress. It was Domian. He asked if everything was okay with Catherine and added by asking if she knew how scared he was that a monster might eat her. This is exactly what the girl was going to ask him, but she asked where Rosa was. The boy replied that Rosa had gone to town early in the morning to buy some groceries, so she was completely safe. The boy was upset that finally the girl understood that when Caesar said useful, he meant Domitian. Although Domian looked like a simple boy, he was actually an imperial knight, which meant that he was skilled with a sword, and the girl decided that as long as he lived on her estate, she had the right to use his services as a This meant that Caesar cared about her safety. She didn't know how to describe the feelings that took over her. The girl thanked Caesar for taking care of her. Caesar did not answer, but looked at the girl with such warmth. He added that if Domitian only cared about the garden when there was a monster on the estate, then he had not yet come to his senses, and his punishment was extended for another 3 months. Caesar paid him. While reading a newspaper on the street, the girl saw that the boy was sitting again and doing nothing. The girl certainly appreciates Caesar's concern, but thinks that in the future she needs to learn to cope with problems on her own. The girl did not know when someone who knows something about her mother would appear, and in general, the girl wanted to stay. Reading the newspaper, the girl was surprised that such a serious incident had occurred, and there was not a single word about it in the newspaper. But if you think about it, then in the case of the goat's face, everything was exactly the same. Although the destruction of the estate did not make much noise, everyone behaved as if they did not notice what had happened. The girl was interrupted by Rosa, calling her name. The girl was surprised. She turned to the hostess, saying that a guest had come to her house and asked if she would show her to the living room. Katerina was surprised because she had not been expecting guests. What shocked Katerina even more was that the girl added that the guest had said that she was Katerina's younger sister. Anna stood in front of the house and said that although the facade was a little shabby, the estate looked quite good, and added that everything turned out well for Katerina. Anna was surprised by her sister's achievements in such a short period of time.